Let's get more perspective on today's vote in Congress and what comes next, and we'll bring in political analyst Brian Sobel. Brian, good to have you on. We appreciate the time. Obviously, a big day in Washington, D.C. with this vote. For months now, as Christina was just mentioning, President Trump and Republican leaders in Congress have worked to block a vote on releasing the Epstein files until the president reversed course earlier this week and urged Congress to release those documents. And then we saw today this near unanimous vote in the House, the Senate agreeing to move that legislation onto the president's desk. How did we arrive at this remarkable moment?
A momentum thing, Alex. At a certain point, those people who didn't want to see a release of the files realized that they were climbing straight up a mountain and that it just wasn't going to work. And I think Donald Trump came to that conclusion a few days ago that, to quote the old Chief Joseph, we will fight no more forever. The idea is that when you have that many people in Washington going in one direction, it becomes a fait accompli.
Can you talk about your reaction to President Trump's reversal here? Because, as you mentioned, for months they tried to block and stall this, and then now we see him calling for an investigation into Democrats. How quickly do you think he's going to move here? Do you think we could see something happen tonight?
It's possible. I mean, I think at this point it's a done deal. He'll sign it and move on. But at the core, the problem here for the president was that I think he felt like any mention of his name in the Epstein files was just going to continue to bog down his presidency. And of course, that was the strategy. That is the strategy of Democrats, is to find out what's in there, and if there's a smoking gun, to expose it. But the knife cuts both ways. You're already seeing that Epstein, a real lowlife, if I may describe him that way, was equally important to Democrats in many respects as he was to Republicans. He was an equal opportunity abuser, and he looked for and curried favor from politicians on both sides of the aisle. So the release of all these files may actually damage the body politic on both sides of the aisle. We will have to wait and see.
Yeah. I was struck by something that we heard today from Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who spoke during a news conference at the Capitol. She said today that she does not believe that the drama surrounding the Epstein files will end anytime soon, because she said the Epstein files, in her words, represent the failures of the federal government and Congress. Why do you think releasing these files has become such an important and pressing issue for voters across the political spectrum?
It's a great question, and I don't know that we have the full answer. I think there are a lot of people in Congress who felt like, opening these files up was the right thing to do. You've watched a president who's basically been tried to be transparent with respect to the Kennedy files, with UFOs, with all these other sorts of things. And then on this subject, he was not as forthcoming. He's apparently come around at this point. But once again, and by the way, Marjorie Taylor Greene went a little bit further in her comments. She said that this was going to be the breakup of MAGA, whatever that means. I assume that means the very conservative right part of the party in her mind. But we'll see. It depends on what's in these files. If it's a show about nothing, or things we already know, or it's 20 years old and doesn't have relevance, then the story will go away. If it has names in there like Donald Trump, like Bill Clinton, and other well-known people nationally and internationally, then it's going to have lots of legs and be very damaging.
On that note, I'm curious if you think there's going to be any controversy surrounding the list itself once it does come out, and whether or not people believe the names that are on that list, and just kind of moving forward, what this means for everyone when it's finally released.
Well, the one danger here with this list or with these files is that innocent people may be dragged through the process. That is to say, they may have been mentioned in these emails and so forth, but had no wrongdoing, did nothing wrong. And so it's going to be some names released where you're going to get denials about anything other than knowing Epstein, but never being on his island, never being in his plane, never being in his, in his group and his crowd. And I think that was some of the fear, I think, of people on both sides of the aisle in terms of this mass release of information, because a lot of names are going to be in there. And as I say, a lot of names that may not be guilty of anything at all.
Yeah, and now the ball is in President Trump's court. This measure to release all the files is on his desk. We'll wait to see how the president responds. Appreciate you coming on today to give us your perspective, political analyst Brian Sobel. Thank you.
My pleasure. A busy political day.
Yeah, sure was. Thank you.